A prison is undoubtedly a terrible place. We've been hearing stories of creepy prison cases for the past 40 years, and today we're bringing you the most terrifying. The number of prisoners sentenced to death frequently changes due to new sentences, appeals to have sentences overturned, commutations, or death sentences. According to detailed data from 32 countries, 5,796 people were imprisoned for more than 1 year without conviction or sentencing. Ecuador. A fight broke out between rival gangs Los Lobos and R7 in a prison in Santo Domingo, about 80 kilometers west of the capital, Quito. Ecuador is fighting a wave of bandits and has experienced one of the deadliest prison riots in recent history. A state of emergency has been declared in parts of Ecuador due to an increase in crime that has shaken Ecuador. A total of 108 inmates escaped prison during the riots, and they are still considered missing, the local police chief said. The Ecuadorian newspaper El Universo reported that according to National Police Commander Fausto Salinas, the incident was caused by a fight involving the transfer of a prisoner known as Anchundia to prison. Stephen Sandison. Some people call him Stephen D. Sandison is a hero who killed his cellmate for molesting a child, but he wants the world to know that's not true. Sandison gave grounds for the murder before a Saginaw County judge. He then returned to court on 22nd April to hear the verdict. Sandison said some people also criticized his actions. "I just did what I thought was best in the time allotted to me," Sandison continued. "I got an email saying I have no right to judge anyone.
And I want to make it quite clear that I didn't judge him. I know God is the only judge we have. I've just set the appointment up. I've been getting these emails saying that it's not my position to judge anybody.
I want to make it clear that I am not condemning him. I know that God is our only judge, promise." Sandison, 51, pleaded guilty in February to the second degree in the murder of a grisly 67-year-old Grand Haven native who was serving a minimum sentence of 25 years for first-degree criminal offenses against a minor of 13. Sandison was already serving a life sentence without parole for the 1991 murder of his girlfriend in Wayne County. In a police confession the next day, Sandison confronted Dyer about his conviction, and he said that after Dyer denied it or stopped trying to justify it, he started attacking Dyer. After Dyer passed out, Sandison used Dyer's shoelaces to strangle him. Sandison told police,
"That night he was trying to justify why he did it, and I just told him to be quiet and he would have to leave in the morning to find a new cell, that he was in prison for child molestation. A really bad case. He continued to talk about it and try to justify it, so he was a little bit bigger than me, so I got down and I hit him in his face a few times, and when he fell, I wrapped a cord around his neck and I took his life."
But you did in fact kill him?
Oh, sure.
And you intended to do it?
Oh, sure, yes. The reason I killed him was because he was a child molester.
Borchard sentences him to life in prison with the possibility of parole without further comment. DeSean Madden. An Algiers County inmate has been convicted and imprisoned for the murder of his cellmate. DeSean Madden, 23, was sentenced to a minimum of 60 years and a maximum of 90 years following a second-degree conviction. This sentence requires serving consecutively the current sentence of a minimum of 16 years and a maximum of 30 years for assault with intent to commit murder, robbery, or car theft. Madden was convicted by a 12-member jury after a 5-day trial last April. The jury deliberated for 2 hours before reaching a verdict. Officials found Madden's cellmate, Rodriguez Montes Burks, lifeless wrapped in a blanket in his cell at an Algiers correctional facility. According to the autopsy report, Burks died of an obstructive head injury. Prosecutors argued that prison staff would have separated the two prisoners had they pleaded to be moved. The officer said the prison staff did not intentionally make the lives of inmates worse.
And I asked him, I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I told you guys to move me." I proceeded to go down to the cell. I noticed there was a bundle of blankets on the bottom bunk.
I just looked at Officer Eisman and I said, "He's dead." He was sweaty, real slippery sweaty.
Correctional officers and inmates who testified also had different views on the relationship between Burks and Madden. Officers thought Burks felt threatened by Madden. However, Algiers District Attorney Karen Barman highlighted one point in her testimony. She agreed that everyone could escape unwanted cellmates.
We need to get moved. I've been placed in the cell with a homo in parentheses, and that's not something I'm into. This is degrading and uncomfortable. I need to move today.
It is true that asking for protection is considered weak. You don't have to kill your cellmate, everyone knows. The defense argued that Madden had no intention of killing Burks and that it was a bad fight. Attorney Derek Romano said no one would know exactly what happened in the cell. Much of the testimony spoke of what happened after Burke's death, and the jury had to find out if the incident was premeditated or premeditated. Sometimes their maybe cannot decide for first degree, second degree, manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. He probably did or could have done it. How are we during the war? Is beyond a reasonable doubt sufficient for the proof standard? Jamie Osuna. Jamie Osuna, convicted of the murder of a woman in Bakersfield in 2011, was found ineligible to stand trial for the gruesome murder of her cellmate. Kings County Judge Randy Edwards came to this conclusion after hearing evidence from 2 psychiatrists who determined that Osuna did not understand the criminal case against him and that his legal team could not help prepare a defense. The criminal case was then suspended until 32-year-old Osuna regained her legal capacity.
Because obviously if a person is incompetent, that person will not understand the proceedings, and obviously that's a fundamental violation. What they want to know is this person competent to proceed to trial?
Jamie Osuna, 31, was accused of decapitating Romero using a homemade knife and removing his eyes, fingers, and part of his lungs. Romero, who spent 27 years in prison, was sent to a cell with Osuna after arriving from Mule Creek State Penitentiary, according to the suit. He was convicted in the second degree after shooting a woman in Compton as a teenager and becoming involved with a gang. His new cellmate, year-old Osuna, was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder and torture of 37-year-old Yvette Pina at the Bakersfield Motel in 2011. With his face tattooed and a Charles Manson-like flair for satanic antiques, he became a shady figure during his 2017 trial, mocking the victim's family and bragging to a TV news reporter about his love of torturing people. In the early hours of March 9, 2019, Osuna systematically tortured and killed Romero. Using a razor-style blade attached to the handle, Osuna ended up cutting Romero's head open. He also envisioned a smiling body cutting into Romero's face on either side of his mouth. Security guards found Osuna holding a necklace made from parts of Romero's body. Why the police didn't spot the grisly scene sooner is not specified in the report. However, according to the Romero family's lawsuit, the bars were covered with a white sheet, suggesting that the guards did not check the cameras thoroughly. The Department of Corrections disputed the findings of the report, saying in a statement that it had conducted a thorough and complete investigation from the start. The family's lawsuit also raises questions about why Romero was in a cell with Osuna, an exterminator and self-proclaimed Satanist who attacked fellow inmates. The idea is that my client should file a lawsuit to get answers to basic questions about his son's death. His disappointment was shared by Romero's mother's lawyer, Justin Sterling. Derek Romano, a man who served time for killing a pizza delivery driver, will now spend 17 years in prison for taking the life of his cellmate. Derek Romano was sentenced to 55 years in prison for the murder of 49-year-old pizza delivery driver John Sullivan in Indianapolis in January 2014. Jeremy Roberts was an accomplice in this case. Roberts was sentenced to 68 years at the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, where Romano served as well. The two asked for a cellmate and have been sharing a living space since last September. Roberts was found dead in bed on May 3, 2020. Romano told investigators that the night before, the two inmates drank homemade wine and got into a silly argument. When he lost control, he hit and kicked Roberts all the way. Roberts suffered serious head and neck injuries. Blood was found scattered all over the room. There was blood and bruises on Romano's leg. According to court documents, Romano left notes on the wall of his cell. One read, "The time of death, 10:30 p.m. Another said, "Pray for the man who died here. He died a better man than I did." Mono pleaded guilty to the murder of Robert Slanks in exchange for the murder charges being dropped.